We're told a lot of the time that snacking is bad. But maybe by the end of this episode, we can convince people that a different type of snack, an exercise snack, not the food snack, is maybe the way to go. So we might begin to see people doing exercise in public places.
Air squats in line at the bank, push-ups on the bus, or a burpee while you're waiting for takeout.
Yeah, a burpee while you're waiting for takeout. I'd love to see that.
The Exercise Science Podcast, trained to improve your health and fitness. Boom.
There it is. Okay, welcome to the Exercise Science Podcast. I'm here with Marty Gabala.
And that's Stuart Phillips. The Exercise Science Podcast is made to translate exercise science for the rest of the world.
Marty is a worldwide expert on time-efficient, high-intensity interval exercise and cardio.
And Stu is the global expert on strength development and protein.
Hard facts, no hype.
Remember, we're on most platforms at Real Exercise Science. Give us a follow or subscribe.
So in this episode, we're going to explore the definition of exercise snacking. We're going to look at the science behind this, so not just some sort of willy-nilly thing. We're going to bring more academic rigor to the idea of VILPA, and we'll explain what that means. And we'll leave you with some potential, hopefully actionable things that listeners can take away and actually do themselves. Might feel a bit foolish, but I'm thinking they might like to try them.
But first, let's have an ad break.
Health information online is messy. Even the good stuff goes stale as science evolves. Consensus shifts, and what was solid 2 years ago may already be revised.
What Everme built, a system that reads through filtered, vetted, published research papers and scores them for credibility before anything reaches you. They've actually filed patents for this technology.
On the app, you share your health goals, and you can also sync your wearables so it knows what your body is saying and what you're curious about. Every morning, you get a personalized health snapshot with an actionable intelligence. You can then link to the AI that learns and evolves with you, or learn more about longevity through dynamic podcasts or curated topics broken down into consumable formats.
Everme combines evidence-based research, advanced AI technology, and thoughtful design to support better everyday decisions related to long-term health and well-being. Learn more at everme.ai.
Okay, we're back, and I should mention that Exercise Science listeners can get a special 2-month free from our sponsor, Everme's Longevity Intelligence Platform, by going to www.everme.ai/exercise science. So Marty, maybe we can start for the audience, what are exercise snacks? How do we define these things?
Yeah, so we didn't come up with the term, but we've defined an exercise snack as a brief bout of vigorous exercise. So that's something that's planned and structured that lasts a minute or less.
A minute or, wow, okay.
And the idea is like you repeat these periodically through the day. So it's it's an inherently intermittent style of exercise that's sort of planned and structured, but periodically through the day.
Right. And so to, again, remove a lot of confusion, VILPA. Tell me what VILPA is.
I know, just what we need in this whole field is another acronym, right?
Acronym, yeah.
So VILPA is Vigorous, Intermittent, Lifestyle Physical Activity. So it's a more encompassing term. As you well know, Stu, physical activity is the broad term. Exercise is a component or a type of physical activity. Right. And it's this idea of being planned and structured. Yep. So VILPA is a more freestyle form. So it's not planned and structured. So the classic example that I give is, you've just taken a cross-country flight. You come off the plane with your luggage. The escalator or the elevator's not working. You still got to get from level 1 to level 2, and you have an option. And so you could just grab the suitcase and power up the stairs. That would be an example of a VILPA bout, right? It's just physical activity. You're going about your day. So that would be an example. And so the idea with VILPA, it's basically defined as 1 to 2 minute bouts of vigorous, intermittent physical activity. So again, this idea of perform sporadically throughout the day. But the big difference would be, whereas exercise snacks are planned and structured, you put them in your calendar, maybe you have your phone going off to remind you to do one. Right. VILPA is more about looking for these opportunities to engage in vigorous effort. You're walking home from the bus or subway at night. You pick up the pace for a few light posts, right? You're coming into work in the morning, got the opportunity to take the stairs. You engage in those opportunities to build it into your day, even though it's not as planned and structured as traditional exercise.
Right. So, you know, I don't have to go to a gym. I don't have to change I don't have to put a gym workout on, a gym gear on, but it's got to do something that's fairly vigorous. I mean, that's the key part of this stuff, right?
It is. That's right. You know, and we've talked before about how we define that, but, you know, it needs to last about a minute because, you know, that's the shortest duration in order to be able to get to this vigorous range for most people, unless, you know, you're doing an all out sprint or something like that.
Fair enough. And you know, so we've got VO2 max, we've got all these things, but what can people then expect for these types of bouts? Because, you know, it certainly doesn't sound like, hey, I'm going to optimize my health with these things. But so where do these fit in?
Yeah. And so number one, this is a whole emerging field of research, right? I think the term VILPA was only coined about 4 or 5 years ago in a review paper that I contributed to. And I want to give a shout out here to Emmanuel Stamatakis, used to be at the University of Sydney, about to move to Monash University in Australia. He's really led a lot of this research, and it's been a real privilege to be associated with some of it. So that's the VILPA work. While we're doing quick shout outs, let me give a quick shout out to John Little, who's my main collaborator on the exercise snacks, Professor John Little at the University of British Columbia.
Matt Kinn guy.
Yeah. Matt Kinn doing well. So again, this is an emerging area of research, and I think it's coming from two sides, if you will. So the exercise snacks research has really developed from small laboratory-based studies using, you know, small numbers of people where we bring them in the lab, we have them do a quick exercise snack on a bike, and they do that a couple of times a day with a few hours in between. Or they do a few bouts of structured stair climbing.
And the hours in between are doing what we're doing and what a lot of us do, sitting in front of a screen and doing not much, right?
Exactly, right? So it's almost like, you know, everyone is familiar with what a traditional HIIT bout is. So maybe a HIIT bout is the 5x1 workout, 5 1-minute efforts in about a 10 or 15-minute period. You can imagine keeping that 5 1-minute bouts, but now you spread them over the whole day. So as part of our exercise snacks definition, we say it's at least an hour in between. So these recovery periods are very long. But the exercise snacks research has been, again, small laboratory-based studies showing that acutely, so you can imagine a series of exercise snacks through the day, this can lead to small but measurable changes in some blood health metrics related to your glucose control, your blood sugar control, or some blood fat measures. The short-term exercise snack studies, so these are lasting up to a couple of weeks, showing small but measurable improvements in VO2 max, cardiorespiratory fitness. And so now those studies need to be made better, right? And so we're at the stage where we're starting to conduct multi-center randomized controlled trials of exercise snacks interventions. The VILPA research has basically come from the epidemiological field. So this is where large numbers of people are followed over time, often many years, and Dr. Stamatakis has really utilized the UK Biobank data. As you know, Stu, this is a large-scale database in the UK.
Amazing resource.
You know, hundreds of thousands of people followed over time with systematic measurements of health outcomes. And often these studies, they were wearing accelerometers, right, to be able to track movement. And so by analyzing that data, the epidemiological research is showing that VILPA bouts accumulating about 4 minutes a day of this vigorous lifestyle physical activity, 4 minutes a day is associated with 25% reductions in all-cause mortality, even larger reductions in cardiovascular disease mortality. So these aren't cause and effect studies.
No.
But it's suggesting that this micro pattern of vigorous movement can be very beneficial.
So, and you and I, we did hacking exercise for health, shout out, but we referred to a study in there that's sort of classically, almost the grassroots of like, this is the person who invented exercise physiology, epidemiology, if you like. And it was an observational study of London bus drivers. So sitting, a lot. And, if you've been to London, double-decker bus versus bus conductors. Now, I don't think they have too many conductors anymore because everybody's got a pass. But, back in the day, the conductors would run around and they'd have a machine to print tickets. So up and down stairs kind of all day, and a lot more standing versus sitting. And conductors lived a whole heck of a lot longer and disease-free than drivers.
100%. That's early classic epidemiological research. And so you're right, it's parallels now with showing that these, and so the interesting thing with some of the early VILPA studies, and I say early, this only a couple of years ago, is the people in these studies were self-described non-exercisers.
Yeah.
So these people didn't consider themselves as regular exercisers, but as they were just going about their day, inevitably, they, some would find themselves engaging in vigorous movement. And so using accelerometers, you usually look at, the speed of how quickly they're moving. Anyway, a lot of, complex science to boil down the essential findings and very careful science. But again, the big picture takeaway, 4 minutes a day, vigorous intermittent lifestyle physical activity associated with 25% reductions in all-cause mortality. It's just striking data.
As someone who spent a career researching hypertrophy strength and evidence-based training, my biggest frustration with most fitness apps is that they're either too basic for serious lifters or too generic to feel personal. ViaFit solves both of these issues. Whether you're new to the gym or an experienced lifter, ViaFit gives you access to hundreds of expertly built programs covering hypertrophy, strength, cardio, mobility, and overall performance. Plus, there's a build your own feature for complete customization. What sets ViaFit apart is the depth. You can track training volume by muscle group, monitor weekly progression, and program advanced methods like drop sets, myo reps, and even blood flow restriction training. Every program in ViaFit comes with video demos, guidance on rating of perceived exertion. It also has a smart recovery management tool. There's also a dietitian-approved recipe database and a strong in-app community. ViaFit feels less like a workout app and more like having an experienced coach and a training partner in your pocket. To learn more, visit getviafit.com or download ViaFit on iOS or Android.
As a scientist, my job involves translating scientific research into clear directions for lay people, and the same is true of our supporters at Precision Nutrition. That's because Precision Nutrition is the world leader in research-driven coaching and certification. For 20 years, they've coached everyone from regular people to world-class athletes, including 6 world champions and Olympians. Precision Nutrition is where coaches earn the industry's top credentials and learn to coach people on GLP-1s. They also offer health and weight loss coaching, specializing in GLP-1s for regular folks to amp up their health behaviors with personalized research-backed guidance. Whether you want certification as a master health coach or to get in the best shape of your life, Precision Nutrition is the #1 most recommended nutrition certification program in the world and now specializes in GLP-1 coaching. Their website even offers free assessment to determine your GLP-1 type. Learn more at glpcoaching.com. How are these things working then? So if it's like, are we boosting mitochondria? Is our heart getting bigger? Is our VO2 max going up? Like what's happening?
The theory or the hypothesis would be it's something related to cardiorespiratory fitness, right? So when you do these exercise snacks, you engage in the vigorous physical activity, that's sufficient to elicit some of these responses that we've talked about on other episodes. Your heart becomes a better, stronger pump, your blood vessels get more elastic, your muscles get better at using oxygen. So there's likely sort of the cardiovascular conditioning side of things. The other is you're breaking up prolonged sitting or prolonged sedentary behavior, which, as you know, is a risk factor in its own right.
Crazy.
Maybe with exercise snacks, VILPA-ish approach, you get sort of a dual benefit.
You mentioned that we've got these observational evidence, which, association, not causation, but we do have some trials. So what's the future of the science in this area? Where's it going to go?
Yeah, so, we've talked before about trying to get exercise physiology out of the lab into the real world. It's fine to do these well-controlled laboratory studies, but the series of randomized controlled trials that we're doing right now, again, with Professor Little and colleagues at UBC, so we're doing these 3-month interventions where people are getting exercise snacks prompts on their phone.
Okay.
So basically they come into the lab at the start of the study, we do a battery of tests, their VO2 max, we make a lot of blood measurements, blood health metrics. Then they're randomly assigned to one of 2 different groups. Basically an exercise snacks group that's doing vigorous activities and what we call a low intensity placebo control group, basically a group that's doing stretching exercises. So they're both getting interventions, but the difference is whether it's vigorous in nature or not. And then we have an industry partner who has basically filmed all of these exercise snack examples. And so again, 4 times a day, the folks will get a prompt on their phone. It'll give them a choice and says, do you want to do air squats or do you want to do, lateral lunges? They click a video, it shows them exactly how to do it. So the point being there, it really is in the real world. The intervention's being delivered so that people can do these at home, at work. And again, we just leave them alone. And these initial randomized controlled trials they're feasibility in nature. So, will people adhere to these interventions? Do they drop out? How many completers do we have? And then we're doing preliminary efficacy measurements of fitness, blood health metrics, things like that. But again, this work is ongoing, but we just had a paper out published in a good diabetes journal, Diabetologia, that showed acutely people with well-controlled diabetes that do daily exercise snacks have some improvements in a number of blood sugar metrics. The variability in their blood sugar was less, and importantly, their blood sugar spikes after meals was reduced.
We're smaller,
So again, despite the fact they're doing 4 or 5 minutes a day, I think in these studies it was 4 or 5 snacks a day they had to do, it was enough to move the needle. We're not saying this is not a cure for diabetes, but these are meaningful changes, small but meaningful changes, which as you know, add up over time.
Exactly. And so, you and I have been in the game long enough to see, the physical activity guidelines change. And I think when we both first got into things, it was 150 minutes a week, moderate to vigorous, which hasn't changed, but it had to be done in 30-minute epochs. Like you had to give 30 minutes at a time. Then that got shorter, and it was 10 minutes, but now we're down to 4 minutes. Is that the right picture?
You're right. The previous iteration with the guidelines suggested that bouts of physical activity had to last 10 minutes or more to count. And there was really no scientific basis for that. And so, the changes, I don't want to say the exercise snacks VILPA research have driven the changes, but it certainly supports the change. And now we hear this messaging, all movement counts, all activity counts, but really is reflected in part by VILPA exercise snacks research.
So it's literally, getting up from your desk. So breaking up the sedentary time, which I think, I think everybody can, that's a good idea. Or, you just get tired of sitting, and doing something, not just going for a stroll or a walk, but doing something a little bit vigorous. It's got to last a minute because that's what's going to get you to there. And 4 minutes and that's it.
It's quite remarkable, but again, you hit it.
It's almost unbelievable. Like it's, how low can the dose be, right?
Again, we're not saying that you should only do 4 minutes a day. Ideally, in an ideal world, you're meeting the guidelines and you're sprinkling in some VILPA to break up the sedentary time. But it needs to be vigorous. And so, most people are not going to jump up and measure their heart rate or that.
Yeah.
If it helps you, you want to get to that 7 out of 10 feeling, but you want to be a little out of breath at the end, right? You want to be huffing and puffing a little bit at the end of this 1 minute effort. So, there's no free lunch. So it needs to be challenging in nature. And that's, that we'll use this type of cues to individuals. Make it challenging. Make sure you're huffing and puffing a bit at the end. You don't have to be bent over on your knees, but you want to know that you've worked a little bit in that minute.
So it's interesting, and the parallels, are going. It's with the resistance training, we sort of have with the ACSM position stand the idea like, let's democratize resistance training and make it, not just in the gym and everything, and lots of things begin to work. And this is really doing the same sort of thing. Yeah.
Agree entirely. I use this analogy a lot, but a lot of people think, exercise is this special thing we do in a special place after we change into special clothes. You need the gym membership, you need the right outfit. And it's really just a reminder of the benefits of physical activity. That can be structured exercise, but it really can be done anywhere. Physical activity guidelines based on great science, but it's still intimidating for a lot of people, or they're unwilling to commit that 2.5 hours a week, or it's a daunting number, and so this is just a reminder, hey, start slow, right? Small, these micro, I love this term that Manos has come up with, this micro patterns of physical activity movement in the day. But again, importantly, it's supported by really compelling epidemiological research now, these small laboratory studies, but building towards the randomized controlled trials to at least properly assess using sort of gold standard evidence what we can say and what we can't say. I'll add as well, our first exercise snacks randomized controlled trial, it shows that it was feasible, people enjoyed it, but their VO2 max didn't change.
Yeah.
And so that suggested to us, early on, we started out with 3 snacks a day. And that was based on the lab studies.
Right.
But, in the real world, lots of variables there. And so probably, right now we're aiming for 4 to 5 snacks a day, 20 snacks a week, right? So that's about 20 minutes of these snacks a week. But we're trying to figure out what's really the minimum dose and then go from there.
Yeah. So, this isn't going to turn you into a world-class athlete, but and this is always the pushback. You talk to people about this, people become dismissive of something that, budges the needle. But on a population level, we get, 100,000, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million Canadians to do this, as opposed to, 50,000 people doing the guidelines, which is awesome. Don't get me wrong. I wish we could get everybody, but we've been talking about the guidelines for how many years now? And the data aren't good. People don't adhere to them, and more people aren't doing them.
Right.
Even, as much as we think, how can that be? But so to keep delivering the same message and expect to change the outcome, that's the definition of insanity, right?
No, exactly, right? And so, okay, you're not willing to give 2.5 hours a week, okay, right? I don't even want to give half hour a day, okay, right?
Yeah.
But, can you give me 4 minutes a day?
Yeah.
Right? And so hopefully people start to hear these messages. And then again, for a long time, we've heard all activity counts, but I think the big change is now, yes, all activity counts, but we have really starting to get some compelling data that if that activity is vigorous, it can be really beneficial.
That sounds like something we've heard before. I'm not sure, but squaring the circle on that. If you don't have the time, then, all this time spent in lower intensity stuff, maybe not what you want to aim for.
Absolutely.
So we're curious to see what we get out of the EverMe intelligence model with respect to exercise snacks. And, you can sprinkle these throughout your day. This is what the EverMe intelligence came up with: stair climbing, jump rope, burpees, and high knees.
all great examples. Stair climbing, I think, is the quintessential exercise snack. Burpees, another perennial contender. People don't like those as much, but all great examples, right? And what are we seeing there? 3 of those 4, you don't need any equipment. Arguably, you need access to stairs with the one, or a jump rope, minimal exercise equipment. So it's really getting this point that these are almost calisthenics style exercises. You can do them anywhere. You don't need much space. You need minimal or zero equipment. So, great examples there of things that you can do.
And if you're doing the jump rope, just check that you've got the ceiling clearance, because I'm thinking somebody's like, I have to bring my jump rope into the office, and we don't want to get somebody coming back and saying, I took the lights down.
Exactly.
So our listener question this week comes from Jessica. She's a mom. She says she has no time to exercise. She feels guilty about it. Not uncommon. What's the smallest amount of exercise that she can do? And I think she's talking about cardio, that she feels like she's doing something that can boost her health in a given day.
Yeah, so great question. Hopefully some of the information that we've talked about today, but I think the message there would be, give us 4 minutes a day, Jessica, right? And it doesn't have to be 4 minutes all at once. So 4 minutes spread throughout the day. So maybe, I don't know, if you're getting the kids on the bus in the morning, you sort of skip to the bus stop together quickly, right? You get back home, up and down a single flight of stairs in your house for a minute, later on a series of burpees or air squats, something like that. And, finish it in the day, however you want, maybe a series of high knees. But again, 4 minutes in the day, most of us, I think, or hopefully, even if we're busy, time-pressed lives, can find that.
Yeah, and that guilt comes from, I thought you had to, and that's not the case, right? So
exactly, you get 4 minutes in, hopefully empowering, okay, I did it, right? Yeah. And then I'm going to do it again tomorrow, and you start to build.
Amazing. Okay, thanks for tuning in this week.
Exercise Science is sponsored by EverMe and produced by Ghost Bureau out of Toronto.
Remember, on most platforms, Real Exercise Science. Give us a follow, or if you like this podcast, please tell a friend who's interested in using exercise science to improve their life and their health.
We'll see you next week.
The Exercise Science Podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Strength training and fitness carry inherent risks. Always consult with a physician before starting any new exercise program or making changes to your diet. The hosts, producers, sponsors, and guests of this podcast disclaim any liability for any injuries or losses connected with the information discussed in this show. The science of strength and fitness is continually evolving. While we strive to provide accurate, evidence-based information, we make no representations or warranties regarding the completeness, accuracy, or timeliness of the information discussed.